Not. You can't see me, guys. Right. Shall we make a start then? Is everybody here we're expecting, Nick?
We have got 32 participants.
Oh, excellent. Good. That's better than we normally get down the club, isn't it, for most AGMs? Anyway, I'm going to make a start, boys. So we've got some house rules. I don't know if Dan can show the house rules slide for me. It's about the 5th slide, yeah? So just to save background noise, as I'm sure you probably already know by now, if you mute your microphones whilst other people are talking, and when we come to voting, it's going to be a poll that will show up on the screen, and we vote as we wish, or not, as the case may be. When it comes to proposing and seconding on things, you need to write into the chat box down the bottom with your name and who you want to propose a second. Nick and Dan are monitoring all this, and it's all being recorded. If you prefer not to have your face present, that's obviously me tonight, you turn your camera off. And also there will be facility to watch back afterwards on demand, apparently. So without further ado, I'm assuming everybody's hearing me fine. Any nods, thumbs up? Are you hearing me all right, guys?
Yeah, it's good, Toby.
Yeah, good, right, excellent, thank you. So I'm here to open the AGM. We have some apologies for absence who will be noted, and they are Simon Kersley, John Davis, and John Nicholas. Does anybody know of anybody else that they've had apologies from? No? Okay, well, we'll crack on with that. We've done the house rules. Yep.
Tobias Macy was having trouble.
He's on.
Is he? Oh, I'm sorry, Titch. I'll stay out.
Okay. It's something to do with Toby's and Tobias's, obviously. We've done the house rules. I'm going to run through my piece, and then we're going to hand over to Nigel to do his. What I've decided is there's bullet points going to come up on the screen, but I'm actually going to read out the address that I wrote in Toby style. It's reasonably lengthy, but it covers just over 2 sides of A4, so it's not that bad. So introduction. Good evening to my fellow members of Cranleigh Rugby Club. As I think most of you know, but maybe not everybody, my name is Toby Eves. I was recently asked by the committee to step forward earlier than originally been intended. So I've been trying to fulfill my role as chairman since February, but I don't actually feel my position is official until you as the members have hopefully given me your vote of confidence at today's AGM. So thank you for joining the AGM today. We live in strange times at the moment. As we all adjust to the somewhat bizarre circumstances we find ourselves living under, I do wonder if social isolation is the polar opposite of rugby. Whilst we are, I'm sure, supportive of what our government is trying to do, it increasingly looks like there'll be no return to normal, but rather a new normal, hopefully to be found in that green pasture at the end of Boris's long and deep Alpine tunnel. I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, as you gather. I think we're in the pasture now, apparently. So this offers us some opportunities, and I'm confident, extremely confident, that our club is well placed to take advantage of Boris's brave new world when we do re-emerge into that daylight, hopefully in the not too distant future. Lockdown work. During the first phase of the lockdown, Alan Hill, under the direction of Nigel, has worked extremely hard on an extensive programme of works around the clubhouse, both inside and outside, which you'll hopefully see the benefits of once we're all let back into the clubhouse. Phil Townsend has also been working tirelessly to maintain and restore our poor pitches after the wettest winter on record, followed by a drought through most of April. Playing report. So this is primarily down to our Director of Rugby and First 15 coach, Nick Churchill. and he's going to report in detail on our curtailed 2019-20 season. But I would like to publicly thank both Nick, Luke Edwards, and everyone else who's either played or trained for without individual, aided by his long-time partner in crime, Jason Quick, have done a great job in competitive sides out, week in and week out, during one of the worst injury crises people can remember. Last but not least, Nigel Moore has rallied his both to play a few vets games, but more importantly, perhaps from the club's point of view, to fill in vacancies in the twos and the ones when they've had to call up about half of James's second team players. Both teams remained highly competitive and had prominent finishes in their respective. Looking forward, subject to your votes tonight, I believe that we've assembled an exciting and talented team to lead our club forward into what I think is its 55th season. Being a prop, my maths isn't great though, so I could be wrong. There are many exciting plans being formulated, some of which I'd like to share with you now. Something that I looked at quite closely when I was involved on the committee many years ago was obtaining charitable status for our club. This is something that a number of clubs I know reasonably well, in particular Old Reigation, have done successfully. It's a topic that's often been raised in the past, but one I believe will help to safeguard the future infrastructure of the club and its status for future generations.
Nick, Toby seems to have muted himself.
That was fortunate for you. I got to. Did you hear the charitable status bit?
Just repeat it, please, Toby.
Yeah, okay, all right. Charitable status is a topic often raised before, but one I believe will help us to both safeguard the infrastructure of the club and its status for future generations. It also has the potential to significantly transform our finances. Playing surfaces. As we all know, given the heavy clay soil on which our pitches are situated, each winter it becomes significant surfaces as the season wears on, especially when the weather deals us a poor hand. A number of options are under consideration, and subject to obtaining necessary funding and RFU backing, these include potentially major new drainage for the first 15 pitch. Ultimately, as former ground secretary, I have long held an ambition to pair this with an artificial 4G pitch, which the right business model will ultimately provide us with the potential for, in inverted commas, 24/7 multi-sports usage for local schools, as well as other sports and social clubs. Some of you may remember that I think Nigel Moore was instrumental in changing the name of the club to actually in full Cranleigh Rugby Sports and Social Club, and that's an ambition of ours to be a bigger sports club. Clubhouse. There are, without saying too much about it, because it's not at the stage where we can really properly announce it yet, ambitious plans that are being worked on to transform the scope and potential usage of our clubhouse, which, whilst a clubhouse to be proud of, was designed and built many years ago for the sole purpose of hosting rugby matches and the after-match entertainment. When you visit some of the newer clubhouses in our vicinity, such as Cobham, Farnham and Old Reigation, for example, you see how much more scope we could offer, especially for functions, parties, weddings, as well as hosting business meetings, other club events, other sports, etc. Plans are still very much in their formative stage, but if we can bring them to fruition, especially with the influx of new potential members as Dunsfold Park Village finally starts being built, then we will be fantastically well placed to improve the long-term fortunes of our rugby and sports club. Everybody still hearing me okay? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Departures. As always, we have lost too many good friends over the course of the last year. Too many to mention them all here, but it would be most remiss of me not to mention Nigel Spong. Spongy was and is part of the fabric of Cranleigh Rugby Club. A man who, since he joined, I'm told in 1970 by Dan, played and held virtually every significant position on the committee. He served the club for the best part of 50 years with unfailing loyalty and a burning passion. If we were gathered at the club as usual for this AGM, I would propose 3 cheers for him at this point, but I think that would be a bit naff online, so we'll do that another time. As his son Dan said when I spoke to him about his dad recently, Mum's never forgiven him for all the time he spent at the rugby club. The other people who will really miss him, of course, are Surrey Rugby and, most importantly, the London Society of Referees. So here's to you, Nigel. Retirements. We are sadly saying thank you and goodbye to 4 fantastic servants of the club, at least from the committee anyway, though I'm not sure, or I'm sure we will see them at the bar and pitch side cheering the boys on as always. Kevin Maxted has asked to take a step back, which is not something that he ever did on the pitch, but an unbelievable 40-odd years of service, both playing and on the committee as our honorary secretary, and as a result, a vacancy has arisen. The job, I think, is so big that I'm actually considering suggesting we split the role into 2 or even 3 parts if practical. There is a rough guide to the role that Kevin provided for me kindly, which has been circulated, and it's the one significant role, in fact it is the one role that remains unfilled. So if anybody is prepared to step forward tonight, I'm prepared to have a discussion with them about which parts of the role would be best suited to their skill set and look to find maybe assistance for someone else to do another part of the role. For instance, I know in particular Kevin has struggled with, at his own admission, with the new game management that the RFU introduced. And having spent considerable time and a lot of frustration along with Nigel Spong dealing with Rugby First when it was first introduced, I can only imagine what the game management system is like. But fundamentally, if we don't upload all our fixtures and our results on there, it has a direct effect on things like our international tickets and ability to apply for funding to the RFU. So it's really important that it's done properly. So there's an IT element to this job, but there are other important bits such as the international tickets, which is basically a communications role. So if you are interested, please let me know either tonight or privately. I've already mentioned the guide that Kevin's put forward. Just lastly, say on Kevin, I should add as well as playing mostly at number 8, I believe, for the first 15 throughout the club's most successful seasons. Kevin was bar secretary for many years, as we all know, and managed to combine that with a delightful job of doing the cleaning as well. Thank you, Kevin, for your incredibly long annual service. I think my computer's going to sleep again. Right, it hasn't muted me this time. I think you've earned a rest. Cliff Ilsey arrived, apparently, to live in the rapidly developing village of Cranleigh from North London in the mid-70s. His background was really in football, but someone chatted him up in the shoes one night, and we acquired a highly capable, devoted and loyal servant. From managing the under-16s, I'm told in 1976, soon allowed himself to be talked into taking on the role as Honourable Treasurer, from which he's been trying to retire ever since I've known him for about the last 18 years since he retired from his full-time job. Perhaps this time he'll finally manage to get out, if nothing else, for the long-suffering Hillary's sake. I should add that Cliff has had many other roles within the club, often combining them, including, for instance, being house manager for many years. Please may I thank you, Cliff, on behalf of all the membership, for all your long years of dedicated and unstinting service. Right, guys, we're nearly there. It's the last half page. We now get on to Nigel Moore. Where do I start? Perhaps by admitting that I believe it was I who first persuaded a somewhat reluctant Nigel over a pint or two on tour in Newquay some years ago that he'd been the perfect man for the job. When and if his namesake, Nigel Spong, ever stepped down. Sadly, Spong is no longer with us, but Morris Senior is definitely, and although he's taking a sabbatical, I've never met a Moore who knows how to sit quietly on the back benches. I'm sure that we have by no means heard the last of Nigel, at least I very much hope not. Lastly, on retirements, David Preston, like so many of us, he got involved in the club when his son Kieran first started playing in the minis, and Kieran developed into a fine player, although currently on a somewhat ill-advised sabbatical at one of my former clubs, Horsham. He joined the club as a wee youngster. Dave helped to coach and run his son's age group team for many years until Kieran was old enough to play with Dad. Sadly, Kieran became far too good to play on the same team as Dad, so Dad decided perhaps he could both play for the Vets and try his hand at being chairman, which he did with incredible flair and success in his own inevitable style until his employer Canon offered him his dream job last summer in South Africa. To close, you'll be pleased to know, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I've ended up sitting here addressing you as chairman of Cranleigh RFC. I hope for your votes and support over the coming year as we strive to develop the best rugby club in England, or as Nigel would say, if not the world. Thank you for all attending today's AGM and for your continuing support of Cranleigh Rugby Club. There endeth the speech. Okay, I think we're now moving on to Nigel. Sorry, Nigel, I've said a few of the things I know you're going to say as well, but I got to go first. So, crack on, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, Toby. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you can. Okay, right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. Good. Is that everyone or just you three?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, we can. Well, all right, okay.
Loud and clear, Nigel.
Good.
But
good,
don't
good,
forget,
good.
we asked everybody to mute themselves.
Yes, yes.
Nigel. Crack on, mate.
I'm muted. No, right, off we go. Guys, I'm really going to summarise again what has been said before about quite a few of the people that have worked and serviced this club over the years. But if we just take a quick step backwards and look how this year has gone, like so many businesses, we were engaged in trying to make profit for all our members, making new customers for our customers and our sponsors, and making memories for all the people that actually play in our club and come and support it. Also, I think this, and David started this some years ago, making us more of a community club and actively taking part in some of the community projects that make us, I think, go forward with hand on heart to say we are the beating heart of the community. And Dave, I take my hat off to you on some of the things and initiatives that you put in place. And that's continuing through cancer, through the Sports Foundation, through the charities that you set up. And I'm sure that's going to continue going forward. I think what's happened this last year really doesn't change the philosophy of the club. It's just cut short, in my view. And I'd like to dig out and start thanking some people for their obvious contributions to our great club over this last season, and wheedle out a small number of them to have an accolade. The first one, obviously, is going to go to Cliff, who has been our honorary treasurer for 25 years, a position I see at the heart of the club, and finances at the heart of any business. But with Cliff, it's been so smooth that most members would not have known that he was there. And his hand is all over the cash flows, our P&L account, our asset register, our tax mitigation, which is very important, our sponsorships, our VAT, our banking, our covenants, our accountants, our payments of suppliers, our inland revenue, RFU loans, our cash status, and importantly, keeping me and the other chairman on the straight and narrow with available cash to spend on the projects that befall us as we go through each season. If you look at what we've achieved over the course of the last year, it's quite visible in terms of the club, the grounds, and the car parking. Those are the visible things, but it's the things behind the scene that Cliff is more noticeable for. His influence is all over the club, and he's going to be a hard act to follow. Vicky, who I believe is stepping in as bookkeeper under the auspices of trying to keep those levers in the necessary avenues going forward to help us make sure that we complete our club profitably as we move into the next seasons and beyond and get over this coronavirus. Cliff, as a club, we salute you. There is another mention that I'd like to sort of, and I've played with this person. I think he should be known as Chuckles, really, because it's Kev Maxted. And Kev, yeah, 40 years at the club. And the roles that you've covered, son, are myriad. Apart from being a number 8 and being a pain in the arse for me at prop, I think you're taking a well-earned rest after many years, more than you could shake a stick at. You've controlled our communications between the RFU, the club, its members, for all our benefit. The club constitution, our articles of association, our legal requirements of licensing, were all part of your sphere. And those things obviously are important to the club, and hopefully they will be continued going forward into the next years. If we were a horde of Vikings, son, we would say Skull, but we ain't. So a beer at the bar when this coronavirus is over is more appropriate. I would also like to thank the mini and junior coaches, all of them, from the micros through to the under-17s, for the excellent work and commitment every single week that they do for our club. You're the future of our club. You are the guys that make this club tick going forward. I haven't missed a Sunday or a tournament or a festival or an away game or a home game, even in the mud and rain, and sometimes even storms. And what makes us different and better than any other club? Yep, it's you guys. It's the parents and the nippers. I'm proud of seeing our red and blue shirts colour at each age group, all having fun, all on most occasions winning, and it's the coaching team and managers a big fat thank you from our club. I'd also like to mention Phil Townsend, not Phil my son, he's an arsehole, Phil Townsend, for keeping their ground in tip-top condition in spite of the weather and the lack of funds. How he does it, I don't know. Unbelievable. No ground, no rugby is my view, and you keep it really well on track. On my away visits every Saturday to follow the first team, you would not believe the state of some of the pitches we play on. It is a testament to your work and hard work to keep these pitches turned out every week. It can only get better, as Toby would say. I'd like to mention O2 Touch. It's had its ups and downs in numbers this year, primarily because of the wet weather has been the main culprit. But a high cheer should be heard from the main club as new members continue to join, courtesy of Colette, Ed and Debs. Its revenue stream is new to the club and it's most welcome. The three major parties that would have occurred this quarter have all had to be moved into next year, but they're all confirmed for next year, and that's a really good base to make some cash and some dosh out of O2. Portley Cranes, well, as Toby said, aka the Cranleigh Vets, with a number of fixtures played this season on Friday evenings, I was gobsmacked at over 120 supporters watching in atrocious weather, and that continued on our home games, less so on our away games, but we won 50% of our games, which I suppose is not bad for the first season. And as Toby said, yeah, we would dig in and support the rest of the club where needed. Whoever takes the role on afterwards has got an easier task of digging these guys off the rock or out of the holes and getting them to play on a Saturday or Friday evening. So it really is fun, beer, mates, and obviously the occasional tour, which I'd like to be involved with at some point. The other things that have happened down the club, which are legendary, and when we get to the end of this, you'll see a picture and a photograph of some of the events that we've done at the club. The Lions Tour Down Under, the World Cup and the league lunches were and are a great benefit for our club in numbers and revenue, and long may they continue. But it has to be worked at to drive these opportunities. So if there's anyone out there that's listening to this address, yes, you could plan the next successful event. Help, please. Do not leave it to others. So in summary, if we continue to pay our subs the full amount on standing order or DD, which would be the easier method for the club, continue to coach and train, continue to get stuck in, our club, your club, has a fantastically bright and profitable and envious future. Here's to promotion in 2020-2021 season. And now just take a quick look at these photographs and see the happy faces. Brilliant. Look at that clubhouse, packed to the gunnels. O2, charity, vets team. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Nigel. We didn't overlap too much. Right, next thing, which is official piece of business that we need to do, guys, hopefully you're hearing me, is the minutes of the last meeting. So there's a link just come up on the screen. They were distributed in advance. If we were doing this down the clubhouse, I think probably the first you would have seen them was on your chair when you came in. They were written, I believe, by the gentleman who's just spoken, and they are fairly lengthy and detailed, which is great. If people have read them and they have any questions or matters arising that they want to bring up, now's the time to do it. The way to do that is either to unmute your mic and raise a question, or to put it in the chat. So I'm just going to give you a little opportunity if anybody wishes to raise anything here and now. If not, we will have ask for a proposer and a seconder so that we can pass them. Obviously, we can't do a show of hands. So the link's just gone up, and I'll just wait a minute to see. Thank you, Paul. I didn't see who proposed, but Paul Ashworth seconded.
Can we have a proposer, please?
Yeah, we've got a seconder, but we don't seem to have a proposer. I'll tell you what, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't propose them. I didn't write them.
Dave Preston.
Sorry to say I wasn't there. Dave, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Dave. So that's Dave Preston has proposed them and Paul Ashworth has seconded them. So thank you, guys. If there are anything that, people haven't had a chance to read them and they want to raise anything directly with me after the AGM in the coming days, then please feel free to do so. Those are passed, and we're now going to move on to the exciting bit of the evening, the election of officers. So we have some nominations, which hopefully Dan's going to put up on the screen now. The one position where we need a vote, so I propose we do that first. I'm not sure that Gareth has actually managed to join us. We have apologies from
Gareth is
here. So he is here. Oh, good. Hello, Gareth. Can we put the poll up now, please, Dan or Nick, whoever's doing it?
Yeah.
Right. So I think even I can work this out, what I need to do. So I'll do my vote, I hope. So see, clicking in the box and nothing seems to be happening.
Same here. It's not letting us vote.
If you're panelists, we can't vote, so I'll put everyone back down.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. We're not going to have that many votes then. Why can a panelist not vote?
Because you can see what the percentages is.
We need to have a vote though, Nick.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm putting you all down to attendee.
Yeah, because
Okay.
Okay, we're all members. Yeah, because
I think what Nick's saying is
if
you just give Nick a minute, he's just going to downgrade everyone so he can vote.
Yeah, sure, I've got it. Yeah, okay. I'm happy to be downgraded. Thank you. Do you have to do it one by one, Nick?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So after this, guys, we've got Cliff with the Treasurer's report, and then we get a 10-minute break to go to the bar, so to speak, chat amongst ourselves, and visit the toilet, which I've already done.
Everyone should be able to vote now.
Thanks, Nick.
I'll get them all back up. Toby, you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, I am.
And I'll just end the poll.
Okay, I saw it.
So that's
Okay, so that's final, is it?
So
Okay.
28 votes to Gareth, 4 votes to John Nicholas. So it's an 88% win for Gareth.
So Gareth, congratulations on becoming the new president of Cranleigh Rugby Club. I don't know if he wants to say anything. He's probably muted.
I don't have to get my balls out like Nigel, do I?
It would be preferable, but you don't have to.
Many thanks.
Possibly there may be family watching in the background. I don't know. Not thanks, Kev and Carsty, for the congratulations for Gareth. Right, okay. So I think what we said we were going to do was, because all the other positions are not contested, if nobody's got any objections, instead of going through and voting on every position one by one, in which case we'll definitely be here all night, would be good to just put the rest of the filled positions up all together, and we'll have a block vote on them, if that's okay with people.
Toby, do you want to do the for and against proposal as well, poll?
For and against for the other positions?
Yeah, for the bulk vote.
Yeah, okay. Can we bring the rest of the people up on the screen? Thank you very much. Right, anybody that looked at this earlier will know that we've managed to fill one of the 2 outstanding positions this afternoon. About a couple of hours ago, I spoke to Rob Wheeler, who'd been asking various people, and every time Rob came back to me and talked about it, he sounded more and more like he wanted to do it himself. So in the end, he offered. So he's one of those rare people with 2 jobs, but he reckons they're complementary. And I said, have you asked your wife? And he said, no, she'll be happy. And I said, well, that's what I was saying about my wife. Right, okay, so can we have the poll up to vote on these positions? Please, guys. Okay.
Toby and Cliff, I'll just downgrade you again.
Thank you.
Good to go, Tobes.
You there, Toby?
Toby, can you unmute your mic, please?
Okay, guys. Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay, right. I was saying thank you very much for your votes. It's unanimous. Does anybody have an opinion on whether this motion should be proposed and seconded? Officially to go in the minutes. For sake of safety, in case anybody were to challenge it later, thank you, Paul Dania. And could we have a seconder, please?
Fancast.
Okay, thank you very much. I probably should have done that before we had the vote. I don't know, but anyway, we've done it now. I'll just bring to your attention the obvious thing that we still have a vacancy for the honorary secretary, as I mentioned earlier. Please come and speak to me afterwards if you are interested. Right. Nick's got a poll here.
That's
Right.
what it's done.
Here's your opportunity. We don't need to worry about the vets captain because Rob stepped into the breach there. So thank you very much, Rob Wheeler. If anybody wants to offer their services at this point in time as honorary club secretary, now's a chance for you. Not that you might not have a chance later.
Toby,
Yes.
you can hear me. I think it'd be helpful to circulate what the role requires post this meeting.
Yeah, we have circulated. We'll have to circulate it again.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
For us. Yeah, no, it's fine. That's fine. No, it does no harm to circulate it again. Who's congratulating Josie? And Paul Lynch. Thank you. Some of you may not know Paul Lynch. I can't say that I personally do either, though we've spoken on the phone. Paul has offered to help us with fundraising and entertainments, and has some valuable background in doing this when he lived in the States, in California, I think he said, where he set up, run and funded, I think it was minis and juniors type club with 200 members, which can't be any mean feat in the States. So thank you very much as well, Paul. And I thank everybody else who's either stepped forward for the first time or agreed to continue in their role. I've tried to speak to as many people as possible over the last few months, but I thank you all publicly now. Right, okay. I think we are now at the point where we can have the Treasurer's report. So I'll shut up for a minute and let you listen to Cliff.
Hi, Nick or Dan, if you can put the stuff up on the screen for me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Cliff, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Cliff, fine.
We can hear you, Cliff. Go for it.
Yeah, I can't see anything on the screen at the moment.
Dan's probably just getting up.
Are we rolling the presentation, Dan?
Sorry, am I? Yes, I am waiting for the documentation to be up on the screen. All I can see is the panelists that attending the AGM at the moment, and behind that a Zoom blank screen. So
sorry, Cliff, I did have it stood by. I'm just trying to get it back up. Give me a sec.
Come on, mate, move your feet.
Cliff, do you have a hard copy, or you've got it on your computer screen there?
yeah, no, I have. Yes, it's all right. I just
why don't you make a start while Dan's getting it up on the screen?
Can I just tell you something interesting? Amanda Newman Parsons has sent a chat on the screen to say she's happy to run for club secretary.
Well, that's a good spot, mate. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, she's it just came up in the chat. So, and she can't find the comments box to put her hat in the ring. So I'm just letting you know that. So,
Toby, can we have a proposal and a seconder, please?
What, before she changes her mind? Yeah, okay.
Well, you better, right. And you better ask her first. And you better.
Well, she said she's happy to run.
Okay, fine.
Happy to put a hat in the ring. So unless she tells us otherwise, then yes, well done, Mike. Proposed, just got in before Dan, and Ben seconded. Thanks very much, guys. Amanda, I will get in touch with you. I assume someone has your contact details, and we'll have a chat about and I'll make sure you've got a copy of the role in case you haven't seen what you're volunteering for. Right, well, that is absolutely fantastic news, guys. Yeah, top girl, as you say, Dave. Right, okay, we'll let Cliff get on then.
Okay, that looks like the top page, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In general, I think the club's had a reasonably successful year. We've had a couple of cancelled parties and the like, but overall we've done all right. If we look at the first page, we can see that our sales, this would relate to bar sales, of just over 45,000, and the previous year was 53,000. The previous year we did have one charity function which actually raised £6,000 or more on its own. So, and then of course, but this year we lost the Christmas function, the Halloween function, and the VP celebration lunch didn't seem to take place during this season either. The direct costs relate to the cost of running the bar, slightly down because the club steward left in January. In terms of other income and profits, if you could take the screen down to page 6, Dan, please. Okay. So the 66,952, which is shown as other income and profits, against 87,000 from the previous year, is mainly, right, we'll go from the top. There's the subscriptions have gone up by a considerable amount, and that's mainly due to the subscriptions that came in from the minis and juniors, which was quite a significant extra amount, so that's very useful. The subscriptions of the playing members of the senior club went up by about £1,000 from the previous year, which, given the lack of players we've got, I suppose is okay. But there are still people not paying the right amounts or not paying, even though we've got this the sum up process going, which works quite well. In terms of fundraising, sundry donations and sponsorship, it is a huge amount there, 32,000 against 62,000, and the main reason for that are the number of one-off donations that we received the previous year, one of which was £10,000. There were numerous auctions that took place which gave us donations in the previous year, and it just has to be recognised that when that people give us money, they're not necessarily as a donation, as a one-off, particularly the £10,000, that it's not going to come through every year, and we do see a significant difference every year. The gift aid down by 3,900 from 6,200. Well, whatever we get is a bonus. It's obviously gone down because we had fewer donations, but it's money that we haven't had to do much for other than fill a form in for the HMRC. The international tickets show a slight, no, not a slight, they show a loss, but that's down to the arrangement that we have with some of our sponsors, and their sponsorship more than covers that shortfall there. And we had an RFU grant of £5,000, which went towards the pitch cost last year. So then we went on to expenses. If you go back to the previous page, page 3, Dan, sorry. Okay, yeah, go on. Okay, expenses. Player coaches and other expenses, that includes, player costs will include physio, coaches, kit, food for the players, affiliation fees, and all those other things. The amount spent this year was £7,000 down, because the previous year we had bought quite a lot of extra kit. In terms of the clubhouse and grounds, not a massive amount of difference from one year to the next. We have, however, invested on the ground side. We've spent nearly £17,000 on capital equipment. We bought a tractor, a container, a roller, and a glider machine, which totals £16,000. That's all been capitalised, and we spent on ground maintenance and upkeep £8,600. That's about 5,000–6,000 of that was no, about £7,000 of that was the expenses in maintaining the pitch at the beginning of the last season. In terms of general admin expenses, a bit of an increase there. We have had other expenses to pay out. We've had bar stocks checks to pay out. We've had licenses to pay. We bought new tills for the bar, all of which adds up. And the rest of it is fairly straightforward. Okay, if you just go to, just very quickly, go to page 6 again. Sorry to mess you about. Okay, keep going, yeah. Okay, so fundraising costs, that's the cost of running the dinner dances and any other functions that we've laid on, where we were short of a few functions, so that's why that's gone down. Our rates are about the same as last year, and because of COVID, we aren't paid any rates for the next 12 months. Light heat and waste is down. That's primarily due to probably oil. We either get 2, 3 or 4 deliveries of oil, so that would make the difference there. Repairs and maintenance, in house, we've done a reasonable amount of work in upgrading the VP's lounge. We bought we put a new carpet in there. We bought tables, round tables that can be used for functions. We bought a new fridge, and there's ongoing work in the club which make up those amounts of money. The planning application, a one-off of 7,800, is to cover the cost, if it's approved, of the potential of increasing the size of the property to try and encourage more people to use it for more uses. Cleaning, security, pest control, that's up mainly because the cleaning has gone up a bit in the last few months because of the extra work that needs to be done in the first quarter of the year. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so can you just take it down a bit, Dan, please? Okay. Well, the rest of the items are fairly straightforward. I don't think I really need to go into too much of that. And right down at the end, I don't think there's much else after that. Okay, so if you go back to the top page, Dan, keep me busy. Oh, sorry, page 3. Okay, keep going, yeah. Okay, so last year we potentially had a profit of £9,000, and this year we potentially have a loss of £4,800, but that will be made up of all the capital items that we have bought and identified, for improving the facilities of the ground and the club. So obviously the effect of COVID has had a bit of an impact on us, and at the moment, to allay people's concerns, we do have around about £16,000 in the bank. It's not as much as we would normally have had and would like, because obviously the ground maintenance costs would normally cost us, anything from £8,000 to £16,000. However, in that money, we've received money in this year from the RFU, a rebate that we get for selling our international tickets. We've had our rebate for VAT. Those two items come to about £1,000. We've got £4,000 which we're due to get from HMRC next month for the gift aid, and there's a possibility that we might get a £10,000 grant from Waverley Council. I've submitted an application form to them a couple of days ago, and I'm hopeful that we might get that extra money. So, and we're in many ways we're in a good place, because I think it's about £1,800 a month comes in from subscriptions and donations. So the effect of people paying over the 12-month period is helping us out. I'd like to think that people wouldn't stop paying their subscriptions or donations. As it happens, it's no different to any other year. The season would now have finished. Yeah, would now have finished, and people would still continue to pay through the summer. So I'm hopeful that we're in a good place from that point of view. We have one slight downturn at the moment, which Toby and myself and Nigel were looking at, in that we have a pretty horrific leak in the water, and we're at the moment we've got the water shut off, and we might be lumbered with a hefty water bill, but that's all been looked at. I don't think obviously we'll be passing over the responsibilities to Mike Chapman, and we do have a bookkeeper that we're looking to carry on with some of the work if as and when the time arises. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll be pleased to answer them, or try and answer them.
Cliff, James Moore's just got a question. Do we know how many standing orders have been cancelled or reduced since COVID? Do we know short-term financial impact?
Right, okay, I can't answer exactly, but I think if we've lost 3, that's about the sum total of it. So one of them is at £12.50 a month, so that's £144. One person downgraded his from a player to a non-player, so that's 15. But we're talking about £500 out of those 3 people.
Thanks, Cliff. John
I could
Bailey.
just make a comment on that.
Yes.
Okay. That was yes to John Bailey or yes to me?
Toby, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, to the best of my knowledge, when I've been involved in the committee in the past, we've always had a few players who took the view that if they weren't playing rugby, they didn't have to pay their subs. So we've always had a few, I think, Cliff, who've stopped paying during the summer.
Yeah, not that many, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, Nick, do you want to bring John Bailey's question that was sent in earlier on?
John, do you want to speak?
Where's John here?
Hi, John.
You have the floor, John, if you can unmute yourself. Bottom left on your screen, if you take the mouse down there. Can I suggest, Nick, you read out the question that John sent in?
Yeah, Dan Spawn's got one.
Yeah, I just wondered, Cliff, whether you had an opinion on what had the greater financial impact over the season, whether it was lost fixture days due to pitch and weather, losing league games and supporters and bar take, or whether it was cancelled social events and that sort of thing.
On the evidence of some of the events that we've had, we probably have been taking anywhere in the region of £2,000 to £3,000 for each event. So if we lose 3 events, that's £6,000. I'm not saying we would have taken it for the 3 events that were cancelled. I'm not quite sure which of the O2 events were due to take place in the last quarter of the year. Yeah, impact of lost games is reasonable, but it's fair to say that the take behind the bar on a Saturday, unless you've got a successful VP lunch, is not brilliant. So I would say that losing social functions has had the bigger impact.
Thanks, Cliff.
Can I just say one thing at that point? I don't think. How many home games did we lose? Anybody remember? I mean, I'm thinking maybe Nick Churchill can answer this one best. In terms of first 15 games because of the weather. I think Phil managed to produce a pitch for us to play on pretty much every time. Was there 1 or 2 that we lost?
We did. We only lost effectively one home game, which is the one at the end of the season, which was the old Cats game.
Right.
The other home game was played on one pitch or the other.
Well, I think given the weather, hats off to Phil again. Fantastic effort. Right.
Obviously, the only thing I'd add to that is obviously playing on the Simon Campbell grounds has a potentially adverse effect on the bar.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah. Go on, Cliff.
You're muted then, Cliff.
So, Cliff, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry. I acknowledge that there weren't that many first team games cancelled, but I think there were a lot of second 15 matches that didn't take place, and we also have, and we seem to have had over the last few seasons quite a few gaps in the season where we don't have games. Anyway, that's my comments. Yeah. Okay.
No, Cliff.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cliff.
Yeah.
Oh, Cliff, I just wanted to say thank you very much for all your commitment to the club over the years that I've been part of the club. I know you and I have worked closely on many occasions, and in particular this year when we our HSBC account was closed at short notice, and you filled in for us, and we were able to transact through the senior account, of which you sent back to our account when we ultimately had an account open again. So just want to say thank you very much for accommodating us this year.
That's a pleasure, Gareth. It's always a pleasure to do with people that are doing so much for the club.
Cliff, could I also just jump in and do you put you out of a great injustice? You coached me in my under-16 side in 1988, not 1976.
Sorry. I missed that.
You coached my under-16s team. You helped us out in 1988, not 1976, as I think.
Oh. Oh, right.
Yeah, I was misinformed. I was misinformed by an article that went out with about Cliff's background with the club, so I took my information from there. So I blame the communications man.
Okay.
Okay. Right. We haven't done this question from John Bailey yet. Nick, was John email in earlier, and John seems to have not managed to get his mic working.
So the question,
according to what I'm seeing on the list, John's mic is open. Anyway, go
on. With the new committee assumed now in place after the AGM, it seems to me quite apparent we cannot, with our current playing strength of 1.5 senior size, keep flowing money to pay the expenses of the club without improvements. I'm sure the coaches, captains, etc. will do their very best to increase our attention to players as a rugby club, but I would like to know if there is any plans to increase our income. Who knows when we will get back to full training, games, etc. Still after the virus, it seems sure we will take good time to get back to some normality. Looking at last year's accounts and doubt if this year's is much better, there seems to be a good deal of vulnerability. John.
Can I answer that?
Yes, Cliff, go ahead.
Please do, Cliff.
I received the email through yourself, Nick.
Yes.
And I think his comment is valid. I mean, to only be able to turn out, to have the limited number of players that we have at a club our size is worrying. Not much different to a lot of other clubs. I accept that. As I mentioned before, from an income point of view, we do at least have the benefit of about £1,900 per month coming to the club, and at the moment we do have £16,000 in the account. Once COVID, once we know what the way forward is for COVID, and let's assume that maybe we can rent the house, the club out before we start paying full contact rugby, which may or may not be a possibility. Getting any social function in will obviously help an awful lot. And I don't care. I don't think that we can get away from the fact that in this day and age, and with the clubhouse that we've got, it's inevitable that we will generate more income from outside events, social functions, as opposed to the playing side. That's my comment.
Am I muted or not?
No, you're fine, Toby.
And then I just muted myself. Can I just make an additional comment on that? When Cliff sent that through to me this afternoon, this was the response that I sent him in an email, which hopefully I just found. Hang on, here we go. Thanks, Cliff. Whilst I want tonight's AGM to be as positive and upbeat as possible, we do find ourselves in a unique and tricky position at the moment. I very much share John's concerns, but I think that our longer term vision for the club, as led by our current president, Nigel, which was current when I wrote this afternoon, is ambitious, imaginative and achievable over time. This is clearly a very difficult time for many amateur sports clubs. So for now, with prudent management, we will survive, and then we will thrive and prosper onwards and upwards. Anybody want to comment on that, they're welcome. But I think the summary of that is that we do need to tighten our belts and save money where we can at the moment, and it is a difficult period. Yes, player numbers haven't been great, but I think we've got a lot of potential, and we will move forward.
Yeah, could I just add something that I think if we've got a question on how we're going to raise money during COVID-19, that isn't just a question for Cliff, it's a question for all of us. So I know Gareth's had some good ideas about a GoFundMe page. We've seen Sutton Epsom do the same. But I don't think it's a question for all of us to answer and discuss. It's not a question for us to just put on point on our treasurer, to be honest.
I don't think it was. Yeah, thank you, Rob. I don't think it was sent to all the committee that, but I suppose I responded because of the, I mean, I'm looking at the figures all the time. So,
sure.
But he's got a point, But I mean, there's not much we're in quite a good position at the moment as far as I can see. We could be in a lot worse position.
No, sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we get this 10,000 grant from Waverley, and the key word there is grant, it's a grant, not a loan, I believe, then that will make us all feel a lot more comfortable, I'm sure. But there are various initiatives that the RFU are running that are being explored. And I think just reassure the membership who are present in the AGM today that it will be right at the front of our agenda when we have our first meeting of the new committee, which I've scheduled for next Friday, because we need to crack on. Okay, guys. Unless there are any other questions, there were a couple of hands that were raised, Nick.
Phil Townsend sent me a question. I don't know if Phil wants to speak up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. My question was on page 6, Cliff. Me not being an accounting man, where you talk about, I can't see the figures in front of me at the moment. It was around the maintenance, and then what was the bottom point of it? Page 6.
Why are the repairs, maintenance, and cleaning, security, pest control under separate headings?
Yeah. There I must possibly only jump into conclusions that is where we get tax rebate or VAT or something, is why the repairs and maintenance are separated out from the cleaning, security, and pest control. Cliff, you're on mute. Cliff, you're on mute.
Okay. In general, I did send a reply. I thought it might have gone back to you.
No, it hadn't.
What did I say? Just a minute. I'll be with you in 2 ticks. I mean, basically.
Okay, well, while Cliff's finding that, can I just ask you, Nick? Okay.
Yes.
He's got it.
No, I haven't.
I was just going to ask about these hands that were raised.
We've got Sarah Chapman, Dave Preston, and Gareth.
Okay.
I mean, there's no real reason. I'm just trying to break things down so we can see where we're spending money. In terms of repairs and maintenance, the majority of that money will be spent on providing playing facilities for the playing of rugby. The rates, the light, heat and waste, and cleaning security are there for the provision of people using the club for rugby and other purposes. So it's just a case of splitting it down a bit, really.
Okay.
There's no other reason for it.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Okay, Phil. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay.
Thanks, Cliff. Thank you. Right. Nick, should we deal with these raised hands?
Yeah. Sarah Chapman.
She's just left. She's got duties.
That's a funny looking Sarah.
I think it's been answered.
She's not looking as good as she usually does. Do you know what she wanted to ask?
I'll ask her. Just carry on. I'll just check it's nothing serious. Hang on.
We're not.
EP.
All right. Okay. What?
I'm fine, thanks. No problem.
Okay, cool. And then Gareth was the last one.
Yeah, I've already spoken, Nick.
Okay, cool.
Well, I don't know if we want to touch on initiatives now, or you want to wait till the end.
Let's leave that to the end, because I think people are ready for a break.
Okay, Toby, can we make it a couple of minutes? I think 10 minutes is probably excessive for a pee and topping up your glass.
Yeah, there's no bar to actually.
Right, I've got my glass here. Yeah, no, I've got my own bar. Yeah, a couple of minutes is fine. Yeah. Okay. Mike, do we know Sarah's question?
She thinks it was a mistake. She hasn't raised her hand. She's fine.
Perfect.
Typical. Right. Well, look, I'm going to call that a break then, guys, and we'll all reconvene in a few minutes, hopefully. Okay. Thanks very much.
Dan, do you want to take off the presentation?
See you in a minute.
On the talk.
Somebody's weird.
That's great.
Okay, there you go. I think they can hear you. Yeah, they can hear you now. Yeah.
Great stamina there by whoever that is.
Someone needs a prostate check.
Someone propose that and second that, please.
That's nearly as bad as I was on this American conference call, and this guy introduced the guys that work for him, so he was going to go and exercise in the backyard, and we heard him do the skipping rope, and then he came back and we went, "Oh, sorry guys, I left it off mute. I was doing jump rope," and his two American guys went, "No, that was great. How many were you doing per second?"
Hi, it's Dan Cass here. Land Clear. Are we on mute? Are we on mute?
Yeah, you're off.
Can you hear us?
If you were on mute, then it would say mute.
Rob here.
You're not on mute.
Hello.
Hello, Dan.
And I'll show you how to. And I'll show you how to do it.
I've been muted this whole time. I don't know how to use this fucking
Who's
thing.
that? John.
Bitch.
Hello.
Is that John? Hello.
Hello.
Were you happy with the answer to your question?
My question.
Hello, hello,
That's Tobias.
That's not who I think it is.
Tobias. That is Tobias.
Oh,
You
it's
dickhead.
Tobias. How did I confuse him for John?
They look very similar.
Yeah.
Really good.
John's
Yeah,
better.
yeah. Right, I found the break time slide.
That's a good break time slide. It's nice.
Brief overview from other committee members. It is, yeah. Yeah, I've got to remind me to fill my glass up.
Not filling up very
How
quickly.
many pints do you reckon you get out of 2 litres? How many pints are there in a 2 litre Coke bottle, people?
How do you move it? 5 pints, Dad. There's 5 pints.
I thought it was 3.
That's 3.4.
Well, no, I think this is my 4th, but it could be my 5th. I start losing count.
If you're drinking one of the 2 litre bottles from Firebird, Dad, we usually get 5 pints out of that.
Use your beard trimmer on his nose.
You're pouring your pint from.
Okay. Well,
3.4, definitely.
I got
I left asking
I
about
got 5 pints for the price of 3 then
Where's
from
35?
the King's Head.
Emergency contact. Why has she done that? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can hear you, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm reading Tetley's domestic chats. I don't know how to mute the fucking thing. It's quite interesting.
Now?
Has he left your house?
Jake's used his beard trimmer on his nuts. So if anybody would like to second that.
Yeah.
Make sure
Can we have a picture?
Yeah.
Can we have a picture?
Oh my God, you pervert.
Yes,
that's my godson. That's my godson you're talking about.
Exactly. That's why he's asking.
I've got him a wank bank.
Is it a video or a meme?
This is the best attend. You know what? This is the best attended AGM we've had in years.
Well, how many is there?
I think
10?
it is.
40.
40, bloody hell.
We never get out of the club. We ought to always do this every year. It's much better.
Yeah.
Mind you, Cliff won't be happy because the bar takes me down. But there you go. I would like to say
I propose that, Dan.
No, I don't really. I'd like to just read out, if anybody hasn't got the chat on their screen. Dave Preston said, Hendy, you look lovely, and I couldn't agree more, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Casty.
Well, I'm just so disappointed that you can't all see my lockdown beard, but never mind.
Santa Claus.
Look, I put
Go on,
on a
Dream.
Cranleigh rugby shirt, especially for this evening. What are you drinking, Nick?
Guinness.
I'm naked.
Guinness.
Oh
Good
my.
man. What are you? Casty. Now that's getting quite exciting now.
Painting pictures with words there, Casty.
I think Terce is covering his camera.
There
Have
may
you
well
been
be
doing
some.
barber's work at home, Terce?
What's what?
Have you been trimming yourself up at home, mate?
Trimming. Oh
Do
yeah.
they call it manscaping?
Wonder where you were going with that
Yeah.
for a second.
There'll be some million youth parents on here going, really?
Yeah.
I think we're nearly in a position to go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. That's probably the
think we
best
should-
thing, actually. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So, according to my agenda, we now have a brief overview from other committee members, and the next thing on the slides seems to be a bar and house report from Paul. Is Paul with us?
No. Can't see him.
No. Okay. I haven't
He
seen
was.
him on the list.
I am.
He was.
Yeah. Okay.
I am.
Oh, there he is.
Well,
Anyone?
good. Paul, it's
Yep.
your turn. Not Paul Denyer. Paul Home.
Okay, there's nothing on the slide, so shall I do it?
Bar and
Jimmy?
house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're going to come up as bullet points, mate, but you can have them all up in one go if you want.
Well, there's very little to report, but it's all good news. So I'm pleased to tell you that Heineken are going to support us when we come out the lockdown. They're going to replace the stock that we had with new stock, and also they're going to give us a good discount, and we're going to renegotiate our deal for better discounts. The really good news is we've got Rachel Bartlett is going to be joining us as our bar manager as soon as she can, as soon as they're open. And that'll cover most of the bar services. As you probably won't have seen, but the bar's been polished, painted, and really, I think it's Alan that's done a huge amount of work on it to make it really nice. So everything's good to go. That's where we are at the moment.
Right, thank you very much, Paul. Has anybody got any questions for Paul?
Right.
Nothing on the chat, Nick?
No.
Oh, hello. Is that someone trying to ask a question or not?
Yeah, Paul, I just wondered if
Okay.
Paul, it's Cliff. Sorry.
Okay.
Is it the intention that Rachel is to be an employee of the club and will need a contract and be dealt with as an employee so that she pays tax and national insurance, as has been the case with the last two stewards?
Yes, she's had a draft contract to consider. It's a similar contract to the lady that was with us previously. She will be paying tax, as will anybody that works for us, unless they don't need to. So any outsourced people, contractors, will just sign a document that we've already printed, which is an invoice, and we were dealing with everything that way that I thought we had been dealing with already.
Okay, but the issue is that the payroll, albeit for only one person, is being dealt with by councils in the past, and the information has been sent to them on a monthly basis so that they can prepare a payroll schedule and advise us how much tax we have to pay to HMRC, and also any pension issues that might be done. So I don't know quite who's going to be. Presumably you'll deal with that through councils, will you?
If councils are the choice of the club, yes.
Well, they are our accountants for the last 20, 30 years and have been doing this.
I think there's no doubt about it. Then I think that would be the perfect choice.
I mean, you don't have to. If you want someone else, it's up to you.
I don't know of anybody else.
No. So what we need, okay, we'll talk about it later then.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, guys. It looks to me like next up is Mike Chapman with a membership report. Please, Mike.
Yeah, throw them all up, Nick. Yeah, it's not bad news, but it's not good news, guys. 70 playing members, which was pretty much the same as the year before. So we lost some and we gained some. Some really good gains this year. People coming in from Guildford, and hopefully they've had a great season and they'll stay with us. But we lost some too. So it stayed about steady. It's nice to push that up this season and not lose any and grab some. So I'm sure we'll have a little huddle and work out what our marketing looks like to get more players in. The VPs have grown a little bit, and they're great in that they just pay for being associated with the club and having some drinks during the year and come to the odd dinner. And as Cliff has said a few times, that's nearly £2,000 a month we get in subs between those two parties. Player subs last year were about 13, and this year moved to about 14 and a half. It should have been more than that. Some haven't raised it from the £25 to £30 that they should have done. We've been catching most of those with the sum ups after the game. The captains have been fantastic. Thank you, Ben and James and Mike, Harvey Brown, during the season for using the sum up machines, and we'll get better at that. We've only had, I think we've got 2 complete people who were meant to pay and haven't paid anything, and they'll now owe double subs come the new season, which isn't too bad. But we just need to get better at the discipline and embarrassing those that don't pay, because it's not fair on those that do. But we're improving, but not fast enough. So the focus will continue. And as I say, VP subs a further 10k in the year, which is always important money. If we didn't get that 10k, we'd have been even further worse off this year, 15k loss, which would put us out of business fairly quickly. That's it for membership. I think the question asked by John is very important. How do we continue to drive up numbers? It's the lifeblood of the club, it's the players and the VPs putting the money in every month. So we'll have a huddle and work out what we do. But it's not complicated. There we go.
Thank you very much, Mike. There's on the chat, my namesake Tobias Macy, name and shame. We've had this discussion before actually at AGMs, and I'm fully in favour of that. If someone's not paying the same sub as the guy sitting next to him in the changing room, or binding down with him in the front row or whatever it is, then I think we should publicise that fact. And as Tobias says, name and shame them. Has anybody else got any views on that?
I think you should do it on here so we all know who it is.
Well, I'm
collection point of view. Quick.
A set of stocks at the club while you're at it.
The name and shame gets a little bit tricky. They're just lazy with resetting it. So we have been collecting the sum ups. Most people are paying their full amount. I do agree. It's getting to the stage with some people now. We do need to call them out for the worst offenders. I do think we need to start calling them out publicly, just so everybody else knows about it. Myself,
just to say they're lazy.
The worst names, and I think starting next season we do need to start hitting that up as a highlight. Not everybody that isn't paying their full £30, is it? Because we do chase most people up from the 25, but there's others that aren't at the 25 either yet, and they're still also sum ups.
Sorry, Ben, Toby, et al. Can I suggest a different approach? Can we
sure.
Can we just privately see the names of the individuals concerned, and there may be other issues as to why they're not paying?
Yes,
and have a discussion first before we start naming and shaming.
And I'm not advocating a full-out witch hunt, tortures and that off the case. But I think there's been several people that I've spent the whole year chasing.
Okay.
I've had.
Okay, right, Ben. Well, I'm willing to take this on. If you can share with me the names, I'm happy to have a private conversation with each of the individuals.
Gareth, it's not your job to take it on. Don't worry, fella. We've taken it on, Ben, I, and the captain, James. We know exactly who it is. We collect all the missing £5 on the first game of the month. If they're paying 5, they should be paying 30. This is not a massive issue. We have 1 or 2 people. You don't need to take this on as a big mission. If those 1 people have not paid last year's subs by the start of this new season, we're going to be into the case of can't play rugby fella because you now owe 2 seasons. They're generally people who say they'll pay in one go. All right, we've got 1 individual, and we're not going to name them. Thank you, Tobias. You know who it is.
Oh, shit.
All right, I just did. So, you're going to have a lot to do.
It's not me. It's not me.
Okay. Well, I think it was the scale of it was portrayed as being grander than it is. Then, if
No,
it's
it's not
a couple of individuals.
It's not huge. Does a fantastic job of tracking every single pound which comes in, and he chases Ben and I to say, right, in the summer, who was that who put £7 in, and that'll be a £5 catch-up and £2 for a shirt. So it's not a huge issue. We may be 1,000 light on the whole season, which really, from where it could be, I don't even think it's that much. Okay, so it's not huge. It's always going to, and as you say, there are some particular circumstances, and there are some people who should have paid some £10 match fees who then refused. We've got to work out how we deal with them, Gareth. But it's honestly, you stay strategic, fella. Me and the captains will deal with this. This is what we've got to do.
Okay.
Gareth, can I just thank you for being the voice of reason? And that was very conciliatory for a front row forward as you are these days. But I assume you were just going to take him in a quiet corner and have a stern word with him. So thank you very much. Right, okay. The next thing that I have here seems to be Fixture Secretary, which is Phil Moore. So Phil, can we invite you to do your bit, please?
Yeah, chuck it all up, Nick, if you can, mate. So yeah, quite a brief summary of the season that's just gone and the season we're about to enter. So the first 15 finished mid-table with all but 2 games played, which were obviously cancelled due to coronavirus, which was the same scenario for the second team. However, they finished in second. The 2s do go into a playoff final, but that didn't obviously happen, again, due to COVID, unfortunately. We exited the Junior Vars versus Crawley in the second round. The Surrey Shield never materialised because that actually happens later part of the season. And again, due to COVID. Fat Boy Sevens, again, unfortunately cancelled due to COVID. And obviously all this will take a negative impact on our sales over the bar. One positive thing that did come out of the season was the Calm Barbarians match, which was a new fixture, which hopefully will come an annual event because it was very successful. But it was the Shaylers of old and their teammates regrouping and playing for good cause, and that did generate some good funds for the club. So we do hope to repeat that in years come. In terms of Surrey 2, we should reschedule the season on the 19th of September. Optimistic that will go ahead, but obviously there's quite a road ahead of us before that will come to fruition. We'll enter the Junior Vars. That will commence as of the 12th of September, so earlier than the league. So obviously all of this is TBC, and the fixture schedule is still to be announced. So we know who's in our league, but we just don't know when we'll be playing them. In terms of who got promoted and relegated from Surrey 1 and Surrey 3, so Surrey 1, we had Chipstead and Old Freemans will come down and play in our league, and then London Media and Met Police will come up from Surrey 3. And again, we will re-enter the Junior Vars and Surrey Shield. And just going back to Cliff's point in terms of some of the second team games being cancelled, sometimes that is out of our hands. We have a fixture in the diary, but unfortunately, sometimes on a Friday, that opposition might cry off, and it leaves us too late to try and find another fixture. And therefore losing some bar revenue as a net result. But that is, in summary, last season and the season we're about to go into.
Right, okay, thank you very much, Phil. Has anybody got any questions for Phil?
What about the vets for next year then, Phil? What's the aim for the vets in terms of fixtures?
I'll be guided by, I guess, Robbie Wheeler now in terms of how many games he wants. I'm part of a WhatsApp Vex fixture group. There's plenty of fixtures out there if we want them. So it's just really how many we want, when we want them, and which opposition. There are Vets leagues that we can enter, but the decision was not to enter them in our sort of infinite stages until we can sort of get a consistent team that will run out maybe once a month. But obviously, talking back to player numbers, that sometimes impacts our twos or ones because those guys will play. So it's a bit of a juggling act. Last season, those Vets fixtures were actually played when we didn't have a league game, just so we could maintain the players for our first and seconds.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, on that, so I just work with James and Phil, and I just like to say, I think Nigel Moore's done a fantastic job of, rejuvenating this, and I think the Portley Cranes are always going to be, in my mind, captained by him. But if we'll just liaise with James on second team fixtures are going to take precedence, and we can see what playing pool we've got in terms of vets, and then schedule fixtures accordingly. I mean, I think we'd like to have 6 in a perfect world, but we'll see how we're going. See how we're going on injuries. Hopefully, it's not like last year or last season, and take it from there, I guess.
Thanks.
You want to move it on, Toby?
I was talking and forgot I'd muted myself. There's a lot of comments on the chat thanking Phil for his efforts with the pitches. There's an offer of a fixture with a very famous rugby club that Rory now plays for at Blackheath. I should stress he plays for the social side. But they have a couple of old boys sides, and one's fairly serious, but the other one, the Buccaneers, are very much a sort of the right sort of fixture for the Portley Cranes, I think. And Rory's offering to organise something with Blackheath if you're interested, Robbie and Phil.
That'd be fantastic if we can do that.
Yeah. I don't know if Cranleigh have ever played Blackheath, but I know we've played a few famous clubs in our time. And obviously, although it's a little way away, it's about an hour and a quarter without too much traffic, so it's not too bad. Can take you that long to get through Guildford and up the A3 on a Saturday. And Amanda, our new honorary secretary, not sure if she's aware of the result of the vote, but she said thanks very much and she's off to bed. So actually my bedtime's 9 o'clock, so I need to go as well soon. So we better crack on and I'll stop warbling on. But thanks for your messages, people. So next up is Rob Wheeler in his capacity as Vice President's Secretary. So over to you, Rob.
Sure. Nick and Dan, you can put it all up, please. Thank you. So just to give you a wash up from last season, first of all, a massive thank you to all the VPs, all the friends and supporters of Cranleigh RFC that attended the lunches. We did 180 covers. That would have been, if we'd been allowed to do the last lunch, that would have been easily past 220. Normally we get 50 or 60 to the last lunch, but obviously COVID-19 saw the end of that. Our last lunch, in fact, of which would have been our penultimate lunch, we had 46 people attending on February the 22nd, celebrating John Underhill's birthday and cheering on the Mighty Cranes to win afterwards. And that's what we want from these lunches. It was a perfect day. We had a nice big pot in terms of the Predictor Score, which was won by Ben's dad, and he then donated half of that to the players, and the rest went over the bar. And really, that really spurs us on to next season. Those are the days we want to have. And so, looking to next season, it's about how we look to build on that. And so, we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to focus on 4 to 5 lunches, but hopefully have bigger lunches where we average 40 or so for each of those. We're going to up the price point slightly, and that means we can provide, slightly better quality food and also wine, and really try to build on the sense of occasion, but not forgetting all of the hard work that's been done before. And by that, I don't mean myself, I mean the hard work of the likes of Nigel Moore, who's really driven this. And so we're going to change it up on the great foundation we've got and keep building on that as we go into next season. Obviously, we're going to be dictated to by COVID-19, so it may be that all of those lunches fall. I hope they don't, but they may all fall in the second half of the season. But those are our plans, and we'll as we, I guess all of us, keep a watching brief on how this thing develops, we'll adapt our plans accordingly. But as Mike very rightly said before, the income we generate from the VPs is critical to the future of our club. So we want to make these improvements, and we're driven by, and personally I'm driven by that lunch we had on the 22nd. So that's it. That's it for me, and we're looking forward to hosting the first lunch next season.
No.
All right, thanks very much, Rob. I've not been watching the chat because I slipped out for a quick wee, but I did see something from Paul Lynch which related back to teams like late cry-offs. I believe, Paul, in answer to your question, that certainly when I was involved in second team captaincy a few years ago, there was a £50 penalty which was meant to be incurred by a club if they cried off after 1 o'clock on a Friday in the reserve leagues anyway. The trouble is that, as Phil will tell you, 1 o'clock on a Friday, it's pretty nigh impossible to then try and find another fixture, as I think it's already said. So, and I'm not sure that £50 penalty is actually imposed. But yes, there is a system there. There's lots of comments coming in. Well done, Rob. Good stuff, Rob, which is appreciated. So I guess you guys are reading the chat as well, so I don't need to give you running commentary on it. So unless anybody's got any questions for Rob, I suggest we move on to the grounds report from Phil. Please, Phil.
Evening, guys. Well, as we know by the weather of 19 and 20, it's not been great, from being hard to extremely wet. However, a young Mr. David Preston did work very diligently when I started to take this over of the grounds, and managed to raise funds, so we were able to get a new container, the new tractor, which has been really a great asset, and the new mowing decks on it helped greatly in being able to vary the length of the grass that you can actually play on. So we got a significant contribution. I will name him as David Cooper because he was named in the VP lunch that Rob did, which is a great success. And we got the RFU grant. We sold the old tractor for £1,200, which was good. And of course, all of this is gift aided. So at the end of the day, in the jigs and the reels, the new tractor and mower decks didn't actually cost the club a penny, which was great news. If you can put up the next points there, please, Dan. But due to the weather, though, I couldn't push the trike any longer at my age, although Toby thought I could do. So I resourced a push spray line marker. It was only £200. It was second hand. It's been invaluable. so we could play the rest of the season, and we could mark some lines out for you guys to actually play, which is great. And to see so many games and so many of the junior and mini games actually going on Sundays too. Although it has been a bit of a headache at times to be able to get some lines out so they can see them. The next point there, Dan. Yeah, we arranged a Saturday working party and it was great. But I think that shows the strength of Cranleigh RFC in how many people, men, women and children, turned up to help clear the culverts of the Simon Campbell field down by the road. This has helped hugely, and the water then drained away, and those pitches, whilst they were still wet, weren't as wet as they could have been. So we do need to keep those culverts clear and get the water across the road into Soho Estates land, and so they can have the problems as opposed to ourselves. But that was really good. As Toby's also alluded to, and others, we had varying plans to do things to the pitches last year and this year due to weather again. Unfortunately, that's not been able to happen, although we are looking at some short-term plans to try and reduce the amount of water that's being held, particularly on the first team pitch. And if we can get some culverts in on the far side as well, we hope that that might actually take it away before doing some significant work on the clubhouse pitches. I am investigating at the moment about verti-draining and sanding all 4 pitches and seeing what the cost of that could actually come up to. But the verti-draining is looking very reasonable at the moment, but the pitches, all 4 pitches do desperately need it, and I think it will help us then going through into next year. And with all the minis and juniors and so many games they have, and because there's so many teams we've got, you know, we really need to ensure that all 4 pitches are playable for everybody. So so thanks very much, everybody. Keep the good work up, and if I give a shout out to help do some work down at the club on the grounds one day, then I look forward to seeing you down there. Thanks very much.
Is Phil, as a former ground secretary for more years than I care to remember, certainly more years than my wife cares to remember, there's a lot of love coming across here for you, which is great to see. And I had to chuckle at Paul Ashworth's comment about culvert clearing, great fun, although I fell in, enjoyed getting it sorted. I wish I'd been there to see that, but I was away that weekend, I'm afraid. That's my excuse. Right, I think we're now on to you, Nick, with your communications report. So we'll crack on with that.
I'd like to say thanks to West Sussex Times and the Surrey Ad. They've been good advocates for us this season, more so to West Sussex, with good widespread across those, and John Bailey's match reports, which are fantastic. Read for you guys. We've increased our social media presence with the introduction of our LinkedIn page. So if you are on LinkedIn, please go and follow, please share, please like, and get us out there to the business community. And that is what our proposal is for LinkedIn, to bring our new investors / business partners to our club. We've just rebranded our events and social media contract with Silverback Studios. So as you can see on the right hand side is our latest recruitment poster. So we distributed 5,000 leaflets across Billingshurst, Cranleigh, Ewhurst and the local area through a work party, and thanks to Christian Morris for helping with the post office. This hopefully will generate new players. Looking into next season, we will do another rerun when we come out of lockdown. So we'll be looking at 5,000 to 750 plus pinpointing on social media through Facebook. Our weekly newsletter has over 1,100 subscribers. So we also put that onto Facebook and Twitter. So we do get to a widespread community. We have 800 plus followers on Facebook, 390 on Instagram, and 325 on Twitter. So please follow. And big thanks to Dan Sprong for your help support on the communications, uploading the website, and John Bailey for our weekly match reports in rain, sun, wind, and all weathers. Here's a bit of our social media content which we've improved this season to bring it up into the modern day. So going on to events and fundraising, Dan, do you want to bring the slides up? We had to cancel 3 events this year due to lack of support of paid events. Obviously, we've got overheads to keep, and we weren't hitting our overheads, so we had to cancel events. Following on from that, the RFU pulled their RFU raffle. Last year it was a couple of £100 we made, but we really need to push that if that comes back again. So please support that and pull going forward. Due to COVID, we cancelled Fat Boy Sevens and our dinner and dance, which would have accumulated a large proportion to the bar. So if we didn't have that, we would probably be in profit in the numbers or contribute to it. The introduction of car readers has helped pinpoint people for payments, but it still wasn't enough to make events run. Once the lockdown's lifted, we'll be looking to do a big event for the local community to drive obviously bar sales and also our ticket sales and any lost sales. We've invested in 10 event tables which we use for dinner and dance. Every year we have been hiring from Bentley Brown or other suppliers when they're actually a key asset to our club. So we've actually spent some money towards some event tables which we will be able to rent out for our private parties to create additional revenue. I think there's one more. That's it. Thank you very much. Maybe.
Guys, yeah, I just wanted to say, because I think the chat I'm sending you is private, Nick, but again, vote of thanks, which I'd like to put on record to both Phil on the grounds and to yourself, Nick and Dan, for an absolutely great job in organising this AGM, which is not quite finished, but we're getting there. And all the other brilliant communications work that's been worked on. I did pop away for a quick toilet break in the middle of your speech, Nick, so I apologise. But I'm not sure if you touched on the work that's been done on the new website. I think you did with Silverback, it was on your notes. We're looking at the costings on that, and we will move on from pitch 2, whatever it's called, ASAP, but we're just trying to, I think our branding as a club is phenomenal for a club of our size, for a village club basically, and that's all thanks to Nick and Dan, so thank you very much, guys. Right, okay, now I think one of the highlights of the evening, I think we're moving to the first team captain, club captain, Ben Turson. So I'll pass over to you, Ben.
Oh yeah, just throw it all up. So quite a challenging season, I think it's fair to say, with how it ended, but also primarily a fairly major injury crisis at the club, as that has been talked about previously. Seemed to start off strong with a very good presence pre-season, but seemed to fairly go downhill. So the injuries to both first and seconds started out, I think, with 9 or 10 front row. I think the start of the season ended up with about 1 for some games. On the positive notes, though, several players stepping up from both the 2s and the 1s into the first team that seemed to gel really well and picked up and played as though they just fitted straight in, which I think is a testament to Nick and the coaching team that have brought that sort of the club mentality into our training sessions, which seems to fit really well and has benefited us as a club. In terms of the 2s, I think James Moore's got some stuff to talk about with the 2s when we get onto that. But for myself, primarily, I think I think Nick will touch on more stuff, but I feel we need to. I think we need to recruit more. We've got some very good colts coming up next season from the under-17s, but I feel as a whole, every single club member should be actively recruiting, not just in terms of revenue, but I think this year proved that things can turn from great to bad quite quickly, and I think we need to just to increase the numbers to stop that from happening again next season. James Moore isn't here for tonight. Cheers, Nick. So I can't. He's not going to talk about the twos then. Okay, fair enough. But that's about it, really.
Ben.
Unless anyone's got any questions.
Yeah, Ben. Ben.
Yeah.
Ben, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So there are 70 players registered, but we struggled to get 35 at best.
Yeah.
What are we missing there?
For part of the problem is of those 70 that are registered, a large portion of those are players that they're very intermittent players. It's just why they're not around. They're either players on their way out, or they're players that can only play 1 in 3, 1 in 4 games. Which is why we need to try and invest in getting more. It's not just about the numbers on the sheet; it's about their actual availability as well. So we need to work hard, I feel, on getting players that are around every week. Hopefully train twice a week, and therefore we can then, God forbid, maybe look at getting a third team, if not next season, the season after.
Fair point. Cheers.
Okay, thanks for the question.
I've got a question, Toby. Tobes, I've got a question.
Okay, thanks, Carsty. Yeah.
Ben,
far away.
Ben, in your eyes, Ben, how do you think we can up our training numbers on Tuesday and Thursday nights?
Well, we had a good job this season with not to make myself sound fat, but the food itself was an attraction to the players. The ability to have food straight after training did work. And Nick, the coach, has come up with some really fun training sessions. Due to injury, I only participated in one in the entire season, which didn't help. But I think it's mostly it's spreading the word that they are good, they are enjoyable, and that they're worth the effort. We do get a lot out of them, and unfortunately, I think some people are just that as soon as the weather turns bad, they start crying off a little. So maybe, well, I think it is down to the players that are there really push. Sort of almost try and do a buddy system might be one way of doing it. In my opinion, if everybody brings just one person down with them, as I'm sure Nick hopefully might have some other options later on when we get to his slide, not now, but if one person takes it themselves to nag a friend to come with them, then there's a potential there just to double numbers instantly from week to week.
Can I just pick up on something that Pete Barrow's just put on? Good evening, Pete. Possibly moving training to once a week. Nick Churchill and I have had 2 or 3 meetings before we went to lockdown and been speaking on a regular basis most weeks. And there are some fairly major things that we're looking at in terms of training. We haven't committed to that yet, and I'll leave it to Nick if he wants to share that with you tonight. But I believe he's spoken to quite a few of the players and had positive feedback. So I think before we go to Nick, we have our mini and youth chairman, Paul Denyer. It's his slot. So we'll let Paul do that. Nick's got a lot of good content. Nick's been working very, very hard in the background whilst I forced him to have a salary cut, which I'm sure he won't mind me telling you. This time of year is the time when so much work is done at the club, on the clubhouse, the grounds, and by the coaches in the background that people don't always see. So thank you guys again, and I'll pass over to Cliff's got to go in a minute, so I think we've all thanked Cliff, but I would like to publicly put on record in the minutes, and obviously made my comments earlier, so did Nigel. But thank you again, Cliff, for your fantastic work for the club over the years. And we know we're going to see you around. And obviously there's a handover to be done to Mike and the bookkeeper if we take her on board. The other thing I will say, guys, you'd be pleased to know is Nick Hendy's informed me that we're going to get cut off at 10 o'clock, whatever happens. And I know we need to do any other business. So with no further delay, I'm going to pass over to Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Toby. Dan, just throw the slides up, mate. It's fine. Firstly, congratulations to the new committee. Well done. As it says there, what a first season taken over from Gareth. I've been with the club for sort of 35 years, and I can't remember a season as badly affected by the rain and then obviously coronavirus. We continue to excel in the mini and youth section, and this is down to the continued hard work of all our committee, team managers, coaches and players. But for myself, a big thank you to Gareth, Martin and Lindsay for being my sounding board. Also, I know it's been said many times already, but a big thank you to Phil Townsend for your hard work this season in what's been trying conditions. I've spent some Saturday morning down the club with him, and I know how hard he works and how hard he definitely worked trying to push the trike through the mud. Coming on to our membership sits at over 250 players. And I know there was more looking to join before the lockdown took hold. And that was on the back of the marketing campaign that Nick and Dan and the club did. Next year is looking really positive. We will have a team at every age group from micros to under 18s, which is fantastic. And James Moore put a comment on earlier just saying that although there's only 70 sort of playing members in the senior club, if you look at that as a whole, that's over 300 playing members, which is fantastic. Onto our accounts. Income was slightly down this year, but not massively. Expenditure was up a little bit, mainly due to kitchen sales being impacted by the weather, along with additional outlay on alternative pitch hire. However, we continue to benefit from bringing the kit sales in-house, and we amounted to over £3,700 in kit sales, which is great. We were due to host the prestigious Surrey Festival for the under-9s this year, which would be a significant income earner for our section and the main club. Unfortunately, this was cancelled due to COVID, but the good news is we've got it again for the under-9s in March, so that's fantastic. On the back of the planned festival, we've made a significant investment to purchase some grass parking matting to allow extra parking space next to the Simon Campbell pitches. We were due to install this just before sort of the lockdown happened, so it will be installed when we're free again. As it's been mentioned many times, we changed the way we pay the senior club, and I think we donated or paid over £9,000 to the senior club from a mixture of subscriptions, family memberships and maintenance. We're hopeful, depending on when the season starts, that this will be a similar amount to put us both on a strong footing. And then just lastly, we've had some great success across all our age groups really, as you'll see from the team reports that Nick had sent out, and definitely beating well some of the so-called bigger clubs in the area. We definitely continue to punch well above our size, and that's again a testament to the fantastic coaches that we have. Many are on this call, many are senior club players, which is a great link. On the back of it, we have several players picked at county and academy level, still with Harlequins. We've had Surrey County and Sussex County players, and also a special mention to two of our Colts, who not only made their senior debuts this year, but also first team debuts. One of the dads is sat there, so well done to George Wheeler and Jake Tetley. And lastly, for me, it's just a massive thank you to everyone that gives up their Sunday mornings for the club. I've been there since I was 5, and it's fantastic to see so many people on a Sunday morning, whether it's at a festival, at home, or other clubs representing Cranleigh with the Cranleigh kit on. We couldn't do it without you. That's it. Has anyone got any questions at all?
Paul,
yeah.
In terms of membership, how do you think we'll perform after COVID, being not all members are, and so many kids have so many different activities?
From everything we've seen through the team managers, they've been really actively engaging with the teams going forward. I don't perceive there to be a drop. I think there may even be an uplift. Everyone throughout this COVID has been encouraged to exercise, and what better way to exercise when we can get out of this than playing rugby?
Thank you very much, Paul. Obviously, like me, you've been taking a lead in the exercising.
Growing the beard, not quite to your level, Toby.
All right. Now, we've got 30 minutes left maximum, maybe less if we do well. So I'm going to pass straight over to Nick Churchill, our Director of Rugby, and ask him to go through his very detailed presentation, which the slides you'll shortly see coming up. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, evening everybody. I'll try and be brief because there are a number of slides that are prepared, and I do appreciate the fact that it's 9:30 already. So I'll try and breeze through what I can, and then obviously talk in more detail about what I think we need to. So we're going to cover a couple of things tonight. So we'll look at the numbers from the 1920 season, so last season. Have a look at the season highlight, because of course it was a difficult season. There were definitely highlights, and we're going to look at positive outcomes and conclusions from that season, drawn from myself and drawn from the player feedback that I've had. We're then going to move on to have a look at the 2021 review, which we're going to have a look at our objectives for that season. We're going to have a look at the senior management team. So obviously there's some movers and shakers in the coaching team. We're also going to look at more extensively at how we get back to rugby. So the World Rugby have published some guidelines on how they believe we will return to playing the sport that we love. And I've adapted some of that to present to you guys tonight. And we can also go through that in a bit more detail in a couple of moments. And then at the end, obviously, there are some pre-season proposed dates. Obviously, Phil's already said that the first league fixture will be on the 19th of September. And we have been actually contacted. I've been working with the clubs to put some pre-season games together. Obviously, those dates are all TBC, really, depending on when we actually do get back to full contact rugby. So if we can move on to the first slides. So starting with the first 15, obviously, fifth place finish in Surrey 2. Total of 16 games played, which would obviously be 18. Of those, we won 7 and lost 9. So unfortunately, in the first season, since I've been at Cranleigh, we've actually lost more games than we've won. And looking more closely into it, our home record, slightly more disappointing than we would normally expect. We won 5 games at home in Fortress Wildwood, and we unfortunately shipped 3 to the opposition. Our away record certainly leaves a lot to be desired as well. So only 2 wins on the road and a total of 6 losses. Points scored, 319 points, points conceded, 331, and obviously a negative points difference again. First time for a long time we were in the negative points difference. And Junior Vars again didn't do quite as well as we had done in previous seasons, only reaching the second round, obviously losing out narrowly to Crawley. So in comparison, what I would normally do here is obviously compare the previous seasons, but it's actually quite difficult. You can pop back for me, Dan. Just quite difficult to compare to previous seasons because obviously this season was 2 games shorter. But obviously overall 5th place finish, 5th highest, was in the league, obviously reflecting our 5th place finish, but slightly better on the rest. So actually we were only 4th best defensive record. So a little bit better than our 5th place suggests, 4th best points difference, and 4th highest bonus points tally. The team that actually pipped us to 4th place was our Wellingtonians, who had a significantly different second half of the season to their first. So whether that was due to players not being at uni or whatever it may be, they just pipped us right at the end with some impressive results to that 4th place finish. Moving on to the second team. Second place in the Surrey Combination 1 South, which is an outstanding achievement considering how the large majority of the second team were playing first team rugby last season. Total of 10 games actually played. So of those 10 games played are the actual 10 games. So won 4, drew 1, lost 5. On top of that, there were obviously 3 home walkovers we were given. So again, relating to what we discussed earlier in the AGM about teams not putting out a side against us in our home fixtures, and 1 away fixture which the opposition pulled out of. I don't believe we pulled out of any. I may be wrong, there may be 1 game in there last season we maybe couldn't raise a side, but I think we always endeavoured to raise a side regardless of whether we had the full 15. I know we went to a couple of places with less than 15, but we always endeavoured to make those games or get those games played, and it's actually a shame that more teams in the league didn't. Obviously, home record again, better home record than the ones in total. So obviously won 3 games to draw 1, lost 1, and our away record again something needs to improve. Basically, our whole away record across the club, just the 1 game away and the 4 losses. Points scored 253, points conceded 242, points different positive plus 11. And again, in comparison, second place finish overall, 4th highest point scorers, 4th best defensive record, and 3rd best points difference. I don't want to take anything away from our 2s. Obviously, they're a vital part of our squad. The second place finish does slightly flatter, obviously, with the home wins awarded and the away wins awarded, but that shouldn't be taken. No credit should be taken away from the guys who played in those games, because as we'll see when I move on to the highlights, there were some fantastic results for the 2s this season, and a testament to the fact that we could still put out that 2 side for so many games, considering the injuries we had to the first team players. So season highlights, these are my particular season highlights. So starting first of all, first team away win versus Economicals. Just some history on that. Obviously, we won the first 2 games. We'd lost then to eventual league winners, Amplefordians. And on the back of the Amplefordians game, obviously, we picked up some vital injuries to key first team players. The Economicals game with a very, very mixed squad. And when I say mixed, for those of you who remember, it was very few first team regulars in that team. And the team was basically made up of mainly second team regulars, stalwarts of the squad, and a number of vets. And we produced one of the best all-round displays of rugby there throughout the entire season. Those of you who were there, and I know there's a lot of support, I know Nigel Moore and everybody, they were on the sidelines. It was one of the most impressive performances that we've seen, and we got to see through that season, of just a team driven to play the sort of rugby that we want to play at Cranleigh. And it made all the more amazing by the fact that it was such a mixed squad. So that's my first highlight, and probably my main highlight from the season. But carrying on. Second one, obviously, second team home win against Lightwater. Okay, they beat Lightwater, they scoring 50 points. Okay, and any team scoring 50 points, even in whatever league, is an achievement, and testament to the guys playing in that game and the 2s in general, that putting 50 points on a team, no matter what league and no matter what standard, it's got to be a highlight. It's one of the most enjoyable things to see, one of the most enjoyable things, obviously, to play in as well. So kudos to the seconds on that victory. First 15 away win against Old Cats. Again, those of you who played in it will not forget that game quickly. It was at the turn of the year, bitterly cold, as I'm sure Hugo McAllister will testify. Absolutely bitterly cold that game. And what makes one of my highlights is because we came from behind. We were not in a good way at that point. We lost a number of games. We were not all we were normally accustomed to be come Christmas. And we went a couple of scores down, and the team rallied in that game and produced in the second half the most amazing comeback to win the game against a very voracious crowd, against the elements, against everything. And we thought it would galvanise the second half of the season. It was such an important win for us. Again, second team home win versus Guildfordians. This I've picked out because for any team, again, to nil the opposition is an outstanding result, outstanding display of rugby. And I obviously, I wasn't there to witness the most enjoyable game from the second season. You know, to beat local rivals Guildfordians we have a long history with and a very healthy rivalry with, but to beat them without allowing them to score a single point is simply outstanding. And my last highlight's got to go to obviously the mixed 15 versus the Calm Barbarians, because, you know, at the end, towards the end of the penultimate game that we actually played, to have so many Cranleigh players on the field and for such an enjoyable event, and played in exactly the right spirit of the game, great crowd on the sidelines, fantastic rugby played, and as it says there, immensely enjoyed by all involved. And it was, for me, one of the major highlights of last season. Next slide, Dan. Okay, so we all know about the Eels and whatever from last season. We know we had injury problems. We know we had the worst winter on record as far as that was concerned. We know we missed off the end of the season, the last two fixtures for both sides. But there's always positives, always positives. And these positive outcomes and conclusions are drawn not only from what I think, but having spoken to pretty much the entire squad over the last couple of weeks, having had a bit of time on my hands being at home, these are what not only myself but the players believe are the positive outcomes from last season. So obviously, starting with the league finish for both teams, given the circumstances, given the injuries, given everything else, to finish fifth, you know, top half of the table, if you like, and to finish second in the Twos League is absolutely outstanding, given the circumstances. We all believe, so that's coaches and players alike, that, you know, missed opportunities and lessons to be learned from each game. I think the players will themselves say that there's no team in our league, and in the Twos League either, with the exception perhaps of Farnham, that we couldn't beat. There was no team that absolutely played us off the park. You know, all bar the old Lishans game at the very last game of the season. All games, all losses, if you like, were close contested. And if just for slightly different outcomes, slightly different decisions made in those games, you know, they could have swung either way. So, you know, it's not a season to be down about. It's a season very much to learn from. The key work-ons, obviously, mental toughness and consistency. Coming into the season, one of the main objectives for myself and the coaching team, and was related to the players, is that the most consistent team wins the league. It's that simple at our level. And that was our aim coming into the season. Consistency in training, consistency in selection, consistency from the guys in their availability. If you can produce that, then you produce a team, you know, worthy of challenging for the league. So it's got to be the work on for next season. You know, it continues to be one of our main aims. And mental toughness is the other big one. A number of times we would go behind early, or we would lose momentum, and we don't combat that very well at the moment. And yes, you can blame all sorts of factors of the season, and you know, the dreary weather or whatever it may be. But in general, we need to be mentally tougher in those situations. We need to believe in the rugby that we can play, and believe that we can actually turn around any game, and no team is unbeatable, especially at Wildwood, especially at our clubhouse. Another positive outcome is a successful club-wide call to arms in times of need. Obviously, it's been mentioned a couple of times tonight, how when needed, and when obviously half the two squad are playing for the ones, how the wider club have come to the aid of the senior squad, with all the vets turning out, some guys who haven't played any rugby for donkey's years turning out for those games, and making those games go ahead first and foremost, and also winning some of those games. So it's a real testament to the club as a whole, that we can still call on everything to get involved in times of need. Now, positive outcomes, strength and depth in the face of adversity. The reason I put that in is not so much because, obviously, if we'd have had a deeper squad or not more players, then we perhaps would have tackled the season slightly differently. But I put it in because the players that did stand up in the face of adversity. So when it was the deepest, darkest times last season, when we did have injuries left, right and centre, when it was pissing with rain, when it was freezing cold up at Old Cats, and the guys who did week in, week out play and put themselves available, come and train, the twos guys who did go up again, who did come into the first team squad. And, you know, if at one point in the season, I think we had probably our fourth choice front row fronting up against a first choice Old Blues front row or an Old Amplefordians front row. And they did themselves proud. And that's why I wanted to include that, because whereas some players may have shied away from the fight, there was a lot of the squad, the large majority of the squad who actually stepped up. And that season showed a lot to me. And the guys who actually got involved when the times were tough have a lot to be proud of. On speaking to the squad, one of the main things that comes through clearly is the outstanding camaraderie throughout the squad. And I think it is in times of adversity, so tough times, when a squad can bond even more so. And that certainly seems to be the takeaway from last season. Almost every single player that I spoke to mentioned that one of the outstanding things that they loved about last season was how close the playing squad actually was with one another. And whereas from a coaching point of view, it's sometimes hard to see. You sometimes see maybe rifts between backs and forwards and things like that. I was actually partly surprised to hear that so many believe that, you know, there was such a great camaraderie in the squad. And hopefully we can take that through into next season, and that helped to grow our squad as well. And this last thing,
Nick,
sorry?
I've got to jump. We are going to get cut off this at 10, and we've 3 other things to cover. So can I ask you to try and wrap up in the next couple of minutes, mate?
I'll do my best. Okay, next slide. I'll let you guys read as we go along. Okay. Season objectives, expansion, expand the senior squad. Obviously, we know we need to get more players, and obviously through social media, one-to-one, forgetting mates down, everything else. Integration, massively important to next season is the integration with the Revitalised Colts programme. I've already been in contact with Big Tom, who's obviously heading up the programme with the help of Ben Turson, and that will be a really important focus for the senior rugby squad as well, to get those players integrated as they come of age. Identity, obviously making sure that the Cranleigh rugby identity that we've been working 3 seasons now to try and cultivate, then gets filtered down through that Colts side, and then once that's a success, teams as well. Development, same as always, obviously to try and develop our coaches to the maximum we can, and success got to be an objective. I do believe that both sides have the building blocks to actually go into the next season with aims of success of challenging for both leagues. Two very tough leagues, but I don't see for any reason why we can't challenge in both of them the next coming season. Next one up. Okay, so we put these all up. Just a quick brief overview of our senior management team for the coming season. As some of you may know, Lukey Edwards has moved further away from the club and is no longer able to commit to coaching at the senior level. So I'm looking to replace him with another senior coach. Also try and bring in some assistant second team coaches to boost this coaching squad to 4. Sam Lawrence has accepted the role of strength and conditioning and work alongside the coaching team throughout the season in everything to do with fitness, strength and conditioning and all those. Next half of the slide, Dan. We're also looking for a few auxiliary support roles, first team managers vacancies. We want somebody similar to what Carsey did for the first team a couple of seasons ago. Second team manager, Toby. So hopefully he can manage that with all the other things he'll have to do on a match day. Jeff has taken on the role of statistics and analysis. Some of you will know he did some analysis for us last season, and we'll be boosting that this season. And the last most important thing, obviously on a physio front, is Alice is going to continue as our lead physio, but we are also looking to bolster this with a second physio to obviously support her in what she does, and obviously offer a wider range of physio cover to the senior squad. Okay, so return to rugby guidelines, guys. We're not going to have time to go through these, but what I did was I redacted some of the guidelines from the World Rugby document that dictates how they see us returning to rugby. It's a framework. It's open to all people to read. So if you do get a chance, go on the World Rugby site and read it. It's open to players. It's open to everybody in the rugby community. It's a framework for the RFU to use. Obviously, the RFU will produce their own document, but it gives a very, very interesting insight into how World Rugby sees us getting back to the sport that we love. Okay, so these are the 10 rules of engagement. We can flick through these 2 slides, please, Dan. I won't dwell on this. You can read these at your leisure when you see the notes come up. And they basically, return to rugby is going to be phased. Obviously, phase 1 begins with individual training. Phase 2 then starts with smaller groups, so small group training of less than 10 people. And then phase 3, full contact, full squad training, no contact. So a number of ways that we can do that. And then obviously phase 4 is back to what we would call normal training with full contact allowed. Next slide, please, Dan. So this is what we plan to do in the short term. So as from next week, fitness testing will be beginning. It's going to be mandatory for all first team players, or aspiring first team players, should I say, optional for all others. 3 tests per player, forwards and back specific. And it's going to be the first marker down for where we are as a team, with fitness being one of the main focuses for the coming season. Obviously, we're 2 months since we've played any competitive rugby, and we're possibly 2 months away from anything resembling rugby as well. So it's a good time to get a marker down. We've also, with Sam Lawrence in his new role as strength and conditioning, has put together an off-season conditioning plan for all players. It's aimed at preparing the players for the return to rugby, covers 3 primary areas: body, lower body, cardio, and there's obviously lots of variations. We'll put in more on the group about that very shortly, lads. And then individual training will be allowed on the club grounds, but strictly at designated times only, and with prior notification to myself. But obviously, it will happen when we're doing the fitness testing as well. Coordinated by and in the presence of the senior coaching team, and it also must have 100% compliance with government guidelines regarding social distancing. As for phase 2, possibly in line with government's phase 2 in June, phase 3, which is obviously full squad training, perhaps in July, when obviously the government are looking to open up more venues. It's all linked together, lads. I wish I had more time to explain it to you, but just very briefly.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. We're going to have to call it a day there, mate.
All right.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the other stuff's on the slides. Proposed dates for pre-season and early season games. So have a look at them, guys. Right, now there's 3 things we need to do quite quickly. The first thing is, I've been told by Cliff before he left that he's not sure we actually formally approved the accounts, proposed and seconded them. Nick's been listening back and he thinks we did, but I would just like to make sure that we've covered that important item off. So can I ask to have a proposer and a seconder?
All that's proposed.
Yes,
Thank
Nick.
you.
And then Gareth seconded.
Great, that's done. Now, I'm conscious that people may have been sitting there all evening waiting to ask their question under any other business. If we actually get timed out, please send that question to Nick or directly to me, and we will get back to you on it. And if it needs to go to a particular member of the committee, we'll make sure that happens. But I want to give an opportunity to our new president, Gareth, who Nick tells me wants to share something with you, which I've entitled Gareth's Bit, which sounds all wrong. But anyway, Gareth, I'll throw the floor open to you, please.
Thanks, Toby. Going to try and keep it very brief, but very poignant. Firstly, Easy Fundraising, which we've circulated to all of our members, which is an app in which you just subscribe to. And then when you're shopping at various destinations, the club gets a contribution from 0.5% to 1.5%. There's no cost to anyone. And so if everyone can subscribe to it, and then when you're going through Amazon, eBay, whatever the shopping destination is, the club gets a contribution. So that's an easy win across all our club members. Secondly, it's an initiative that I thought through various other initiatives that I've seen to raise funds. Obviously, we need to raise money for the club for grounds, but on top of that, obviously there are a few members of our club who are not able to work at the moment. They don't qualify for the furlough scheme, and I think we should look at supporting them. In addition to that, we should also look at supporting Cranleigh as a community, and for the club to make a donation to them, which ultimately then will benefit us with players longer term. So the plan is for a simple GoFundMe page for Cranleigh Rugby Club. The objective is for each member, and I think based on the numbers I saw tonight, we've got 400, to raise £100 per member. And as part of that, each member does a short video, 30 seconds, being creative with a rugby ball. Send the video to either myself, Nick, the committee. We'll find out a destination, and then we will judge it, and we'll work out what the sort of benefit is ultimately. But if we do that, and if we can get most of our members to participate, and £100 is the minimum we're looking to raise per member, but we could, that's £40,000, which will go a long way, which John Bailey touched on, to helping our club. Look, for members who can't do the video, something, a photo, a memory, something, but we'll put a spiel together about the importance of the club to the community and what we're willing to give to the community, and how we can benefit them with teamwork, exercise, etc. I think this is a great way to integrate us and also to raise money for the club. If anyone's got any thoughts on that, I think most people have got my number. If you haven't, send it to Nick or Toby or someone, and they'll pass it on to me. And we'll come up with a plan with the next few days. And if we can achieve this over the next sort of 6 weeks, whilst we're still in lockdown, I think it's a great opportunity for us to raise money for the club. Thanks, Tobes.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Gareth. We have literally got a couple of minutes before we get cut off, guys. So I'm going to say thank you very much. And this is your chance for any other business or questions that you want to ask.
Toby, can we have someone propose and second for this video for a rewatch, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'll propose
Nick,
it.
yeah, I'll propose second whenever's required.
Propose.
Yeah, Gareth and I.
And then second, Toby. Thank you.
Second, Toby. Yeah, okay.
Toby, it's Casty. I'd just like to say thanks very much for a great AGM, and best of luck to you and your new committee that's voted in tonight. And you can rest assured that I and all the other members will be behind you all the way. So good luck, and looking forward to a super season. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. I think that would actually be a great note to finish on, unless anybody else wants to jump in. Hopefully, we will get into pre-season. Nick's obviously doing a lot of work with the players, and I intend to have some sort of members' evening meeting, general piss-up barbecue, whatever at the club, hopefully involving a bit of rugby as soon as we can. So thank you all very much again for attending. Your participation has been fantastic tonight, guys, and look forward to doing our first committee meeting in this format next Friday evening at 6:30, we said. Okay, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Great stuff. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.